Welcome to the show today. Today I have David Klement on the show, and he's the COO at LocalSearch. And I'm very, very excited to talk to you today. We got a very warm recommendation and introduction to each other from a common friend. And I'm very excited to hear your story because last time we talked last time, and you mentioned some fun stories, some interesting ones. So I'm very excited to hear some of them and dive into some of the lessons you learned along the way and all kinds of other things. So first of all, welcome to the show, and maybe let's dive right in.
Sure.
Can you talk about some of the defining moments that you feel really shaped you as a human being, that really shaped you as a leader along the way?
Okay. So probably one of the most defining moments in my life was when I was 13. I'm originally Dutch, but I'm grown up in Germany. And when I was 13, I was already what back then no one has known as nerd, but I was a nerd back then already. Actually, I got in touch with the IT guy of my local town hall, and we talked a little bit about IT and especially about the internet, and that was back in 1995. So at a point where no one really knew what the internet is, and we had these really slow modem connections, and lines were breaking all the time and stuff like that. He realized actually that, okay, there's a young guy that understands IT and especially this internet thing that we don't really understand ourselves. And so he actually spoke to a couple of colleagues, and then ended up hiring me as a 13-year-old. So in the mornings I went to school, in the afternoons I worked there, made their website, helped them setting up servers and stuff like that. And this is probably one of the most defining moments in my life, especially because there was this guy that saw something in me as a 13-year-old, bad haircut, probably my mother put clothes out for me so I wear them and stuff like that. But he saw, okay, there's probably someone that really knows stuff, and let's give him a chance. And especially for someone that is 13 years old, he, in the usual case, people say, yeah, okay, this kid and things like that. But this guy really helped me, and I'm really thankful because he probably was the beginning of my career in IT and .com companies and stuff like that. So that's probably the most defining moment of my career, even if it's right in the beginning. And then from there on, I jumped, after I graduated from school, I jumped into startups. And I think the second most interesting phase of my career was, everything was interesting, of course, but when I was literally living for 1.5 years in India, in Bangalore, and did outsourcing work there for a small startup called Edjak. Probably the founder, if he sees that, it wasn't a small company at the end. It got bigger and bigger and got sold at the end. But that was a really interesting phase of my life in terms of learning about cultures, learning about how outsourcing works, how things need to be set up. Was the first real touch point with agile development, especially because no one in India, or especially in that office, had heard of this. So we reorganized everything and made the team a real great team that worked and produced code and products. Yeah.
That's two really big ones. I mean, the one side is probably from a mentoring side is a big one, and the other one from a cultural aspect, getting out of the country, comfort zone, and all these kinds of fun things. That's two really big ones. Thank you for sharing those. Maybe one additional thing. I mean, you already mentioned many people along the journey, but is there anybody else that you would point out along the journey that really made a big impression on you, that really shaped you?
At the end, it's probably the usual suspects, my parents, because they had, when I was 11, I got for my birthday a computer, the first computer we had, like a 286 CPU, really slow thing, not able to connect to the internet and stuff like that. Actually, my parents got really, I would not say angry, more frustrated when once they saw me a year after that, with a drill putting holes into it so another motherboard fits into that thing, because apparently that computer, and I actually spoke to my mother last week about this, that computer was really, really expensive back for that time. Yeah, so they actually laid the ground back then in the early 90s. So their son had the possibility to touch computers and play with technology.
I can imagine that's a piece that started your engineering career with the holes and everything.
Let's say it's more the scientist part here.
That's really good.
Let's try what happens if I pull that plug once it's on and stuff like that. So I saw a lot of sparks coming out of computers and stuff like that. Yeah.
That's a really good one. That's perfect. Now I want to move a little bit into your motivations, because I'm always curious what drives people. The why behind everything. For you, I mean, getting up every morning, going out there, doing the work, sometimes doing difficult work, sometimes facing challenges and all kinds of things that come your way. What is it that drives you to get up every morning?
Change. I think it's really change in the first place. So I'm in the good position that I literally worked all my career with brilliant teams, with brilliant minds that really wanted to change something in existence that is already existing. Like for the company I'm working right now, we are a 40-year-old company. Lot of mergers, acquisitions, and things along the way. We are coming traditionally from printed telephone books. Yes, they still exist. We still print telephone books in this country, but all my colleagues here are really motivated in driving the business, in understanding that there needs to be a change, that everything becomes digital. And having a brilliant team and people that motivate each other is literally what's driving me. And to be honest, I really enjoy what I'm doing. I stand up at 5:30 in the morning. I've never done that for another job in my life. And I really enjoy coming to the office. And there is, of course, sometimes hard days, as you mentioned, and sometimes there's decisions that need to be made that are not that popular. But at the end, what really drives the entire thing is motivated people that really want to do change, and at the end, probably having a footprint in some way. If it is most probably for our customers in terms of really bringing them new business, bringing loyalty in terms of returning customers and stuff like that, really helping SMEs in Switzerland to be right in the digital age. So, and understanding what digital means, and understand that traditional businesses are everywhere in danger in terms of digital things that are happening here and there.
That's a big one. I mean, just what shot right out was change, a big one, right? I mean, the only constant in life really is change, right? And it's a very interesting driver. The variety of things, the challenging the status quo. I mean, you're also an entrepreneur, so it makes a lot of sense there. You mentioned about topic of digital. Maybe we stay there for a second. You mentioned you're still printing phone books, which is a huge part still. You mentioned this last time. It's very interesting. I had no idea. I mean, I know that like when I was a kid, I still had the phone books at home. I haven't seen one for a long time. Maybe because
I'm going to send you one. It's no problem.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. No, I haven't seen one in a long time, and I had no idea that this is still such a big part. And the other piece you mentioned is digital. And maybe you can share a little bit more about that. Like, what is it? Because when I also hear like LocalSearch, for me, it's the app on my phone, right? Where I look up phone numbers, and it's this beautiful service that blocks all the telemarketing companies for me that want to call me, which I love. But beyond that, I have no idea what LocalSearch really is. And you mentioned so many things now, and last conversation as well. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit, especially on that digital topic.
Yeah. So as I said, traditionally coming from the telephone books, at some point, everyone realized, okay, this is becoming digital. This is how I'm really honest here, this is how I'm looking up phone numbers myself, right? So why would I open a book and look for a number and then type it into my phone? But apparently there is a lot of people in the population that are a little bit older than the two of us that still like to use the telephone book, and we have, of course, stats that show that. But of course, there was a transition of the business in the last couple of years, and so, as you mentioned, we have the apps and we have the websites called local.ch and search.ch, which both have, of course, a catalog of telephone numbers, a directory, if you like it in that way. But there is so much more in terms of user functionalities. So for end user like you, starting with everything that is around you, from ATM machines to toilets to opening hours of businesses to actually, even if you in Switzerland, all the rail timetables and stuff like that, so you can plan your trip with these apps. And then on the other way, for businesses, we have a couple of products like, for example, Localina, which is restaurant table booking software that you as an end user can use, of course, to book your dinner table. And on the other side, the restaurant owner can see which tables are free and plan and do stuff like that. Then we have a product called My Cockpit, which is literally a booking solution for everything else. So that could be the hairdresser around the corner, or we even have a bakery where you can reserve your croissant in the morning, so they are not sold out once you arrive at the bakery, and stuff like that. So and this is one aspect. And we have a product called My Presence that helps you to organize your data that is not only in our directories, but also on things like TripAdvisor and Google and Facebook and other social media channels, especially because for small SME, it's easy to say, okay, I'm changing my opening hours from 8 to 8, or like in the evening. But at the end, you say, okay, I'm changing that probably on Google and then changing it on local and search. But then you forgot probably all the 40 other websites that are in that ecosystem. And every one of these 40 websites has another 100 crawlers that crawls the data from there. So your data is ending up in a big mess if you don't take care of this aspect of the business. And we also, which is not really well known, unfortunately, is we are the biggest website producer in Switzerland. So it means a business can come to us and we are taking care of every aspect of a website for our customers. And this could go down to literally a short interview where we ask you what are your specialties, what are the things that you're selling, and then we create a website and host that system for you, and you can do changes whenever you want. And this is also part of the business, and many other things.
Now, you see, most of these things I had no idea, right? I mean, until last time we talked. Now yeah. I knew most of it, but until last time I talked, I had no idea. And this is very interesting. I mean, the variety of things as well. And, also, these different things that in the US, like table booking is this massive thing, right? And there's so many apps and everything. In Switzerland, I've never ever seen anything like that. And it's very good to see, like, local taking care of all these digital niches that are, I mean, so, needed, especially in a market like Switzerland that often works a bit more traditionally. And I'm very, it's so good to see that, LocalSearch is putting a lot of effort into that as well. So that's great. Now, going back to you once again as a person, I'd love to hear a bit more about your journey in terms of lessons learned and some of the interesting stories that you told me last time as well. If you had to point out maybe one or two like really important lessons that you learned along the way, stuff that really stuck with you for one or the other reason, what kind of lessons would they be?
So probably I start with my personal biggest mistake I ever made. That was in 1997. A friend of mine reached out to me and said, okay, you can program, right? I said, yeah. And you understand that internet thing? Yeah, I do. So I have this idea. I want to build a system where men and women can meet. And I said, like dating? And he said, yeah. I said, no one is doing that over the internet. So that is probably the biggest mistake I ever made. There's a couple of more in terms of business ideas that came across the years. So one of the things that I probably learned is sometimes listening to bold moves is probably a real good idea, and reconsider them and not just say, okay, this is all you're stupid, or you know that idea is not good. No, we are not doing that. The internet is for information sharing, something like that. I mean, we all know these big dating platforms today, and I mean, from a usability perspective, actually got down to that movement now. So yeah, this is probably the biggest mistake I made in my entire career. And despite that, I think the biggest learning that I have is listen to your people, listen to the people you're working with, listen to also people in your department, because I'm a big fan of enabling people to do their work. We have a lot of people, everyone here is smart, and in every company I worked, people were smart. So let them do what they can do best, and don't tell them what they have to do in terms of nitty-gritty micromanagement, because everyone stands up and everyone is able to tie his shoes in the morning. So and probably they are all better specialists than I am, and not probably, they are all better specialists than I am. So listening to people, listening to bold ideas, and don't just say, okay, no, this is far in the future. No, we are not doing that. Yeah.
The first one I love as well there, it's a bit like, there's some stories that I heard from people that, people came out to them and said, there's this thing where we would want to enable payments over the internet. And it was like, nobody's ever.
Who wants to do that?
Like, nobody's ever going to put in their credit card into a website, right? Ever, right?
Never.
Well, that's a good one. And the second one is huge. Like, listen to your people, enablement over everything else. That is so key. It also allows you to be a lot less the bottleneck of everything, because that's such a big danger that so many people, including myself, run into all the time. And just this focus on the enablement is huge there. So maybe I'll stay on that topic for a second. Yeah. Leadership. And I'm not interested in your definition of leadership or any of that. I'm very interested in how you do it. I mean, basically meaning, how do you run an organization? How to be in charge of such an organization? And you're leading a pretty big organization there. And how do you deal with letting go of control and trusting your people?
I think I'm coming with a base trust for every employee that I have, or everyone I'm working with. And if you don't use the trust in a negative way, then you get more trust and more trust. And so I'm trying really to enable everyone in my organization. And then I have my leadership team, of course, that is managing several teams for me. And I just don't want to interrupt their daily business all the time. So of course we have like weekly meetings, and we also communicate every single day, sometimes about big topics, sometimes about small topics. But being involved in every nitty-gritty detail and every micro thing that is happening is just destroying you. At the end, the day only has 24 hours. I need a good 6 to 7 hours of sleep. Then I have a family that I really like to see, and that's actually leaving me with, let's say, 10 to 12 hours a day that I can spend for work. Or and to be honest, if you enable people and you trust them, and you understand that these people are doing their job correct, or they do what needs to be done to achieve a goal, then this works out. There's one more thing which is really key to me. I need people that sometimes bring order into my chaos, to be honest. So sometimes I'm coming with that idea just around the corner, and then they pick it up and say, okay, I'm taking care of it. So one of the things that I really need to keep my organization running is no sinkholes, where I just put stuff in and then never hear back about them. but I fortunately have real good colleagues here that I really can trust and that really move the entire department and the entire company and solve problems and find solutions to things that are happening. That
So,
was quite general, to be honest.
No, but I mean, there's a couple of things that I heard out. Maybe we can elaborate on that. I mean, one is this, I call it team dynamics. Sort of like, you know, you get a team, you get an organization, and what you mentioned is you have a very specific personality type, like we all have, right? And there's got to be complementary talent, strengths, skills, whatever to that. So how do you deal with that? I mean, when you come into an organization, you know, might be something over, or when you're simply building an organization, expanding an organization, do you hire people based on the specific, you know, profile, or how do you make sure people are able to work together well?
Yeah. So I have probably the most complicated hiring process in the world. So first of all, I'm not really looking at CVs. I, of course, look if someone has done something which is similar to the position that I'm trying to fill. But I am not that much interested in what degree you have, or if you, I don't know, spend years in a foreign country, or what kind of hobby you have, or stuff like that. So the most important part for me is when someone is coming into an interview, is that someone that I can talk to? Is that someone that where I find common ground, where we can literally say, okay, we are talking about business for a while, but then we are also talking about probably personal stuff in terms of, are we sitting in a room and find something to talk about for half an hour, or are we just sitting there and after 15 minutes, all the questions on my list are done and that's it. And then usually, and probably some of the people that will interview with me at some point will see that. So one of the usual questions I'm asking people is, what do you need to be happy in your job? And what are the things that I should not do to make you unhappy in your job? And this is followed up by, this is the first part of the interview. Usually there's an HR guy with us sitting there, also asking a lot of questions. And that is followed by usually a dinner or lunch, where I just have the possibility, not only me, but also the candidate has the possibility to find out how I am working, what my thoughts are, what type of person I am, if I'm a sociopath or not, and also for me the possibility to find out how what drives the other person. And usually, from my perspective, it's the best idea to have 2 hours. Eat something, have a little bit more, not an interview type of situation to find out. And once that is passed, then I am a big fan of sitting or actually putting colleagues into a room and a potential candidate, so everyone knows in what type of team he's ending up. And then, to be honest, everyone in my team has a veto right, so they can say, okay, I don't see him working for us, which literally never happens, to be honest, after 2 steps, because at the end, what I'm really looking for is people that fit into a team, that motivate the team, and I'm looking for people that just have drive and that fit into a culture that we already built or trying to build in some point. And just at the end, we are going at least 8 hours every day into the office, and we want to see happy people and we want to see motivated people. And I want to go there. I really want to go to the office, and I want to be happy to go to the office and not to think like, oh, I have to go there again. And this is really what I'm looking for usually.
And that's a big one. It's so funny. Like what you said is, what works best at this, I think, second step there, what you mentioned is the not interview style meeting. So the not interview, basically. But what works best is a lunch or a dinner or something like that, where maybe the only thing in between you and them is food and maybe a drink or something.
Usually.
Exactly. And it's just very, very interesting because it's not very different from how partnerships are built, right? Or anything important is co-created. And it's just so, interesting to see how people go about that. So that's the hiring.
Yeah, usually one thing that also helps with that is when I hire people, I don't want to fire them immediately. So if you do that, you can actually already figure out if that person is a fit or not. And I never had to fire someone in the first 3 or 6 months in my career so far. So that's pretty a good thing, because otherwise it's just a waste of time for everyone.
It definitely is. Yes, yeah. It definitely is. Yeah, that's a big thing as well. Just, being conscious. Of course, nobody's sort of like trying to hire somebody so they can fire them again after 3 months, but being conscious of this idea that you definitely do not want to have to let them go after 6 months just puts a lot more accountability on yourself to say, well, okay, I really got to do it right. I really got to make sure this is done right.
No one wants to sit in that meeting. No one wants to sit in a meeting where you have to let someone go.
Yep, absolutely.
I sleep bad before, so no one wants.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Now, so once people are in the organization, how do you ensure people work together well? Do you have tools, meetups? Do you go to the Bahamas every once in a while, or?
Oh, that would be brilliant, to be honest. Unfortunately, I don't have the funding for the Bahamas. One thing that I learned is beer helps a lot, to be honest. No, it's this occasional, just sitting together and having probably a beer, and you can also drink water or a Coke or whatever. I don't care. But it's this, sitting together and doing things together. I have, for example, there's a small group of my colleagues here in Zurich that we are going together to the Oktoberfest in Munich. And this is self-organized. And of course, we will have beer there, pretty sure. But it's this, forcing communication is always bring people together at the end. And one of the things that we did this year, which we tried out, was a happiness week. And I'm not the inventor of that idea. I probably changed a couple of things, but what we did is we put actually every name of everyone in the entire department into a hat. And I have colleagues in Bern, Sion, and Zurich. And everyone had to draw like a Jewels Club, actually, a name. And it was your responsibility to make that person happy for 1 week with small gestures. So there was also a limit of 5 francs that you were allowed to spend for the entire week. But it was about these small things, like sending a postcard to someone saying, hi, I hope your day is great. Or sending out YouTube videos with cool songs to someone else. And I even saw someone in the graphics department actually building wrapping paper that was fully customized with pictures of the person on top, and really creative and fun process for everyone. And we did that for 1 week. And there was also, of course, beer involved again, as always. But everyone now thinks everyone is drinking at LocalSearch. No, it's just my department. But also, just things like bring someone a coffee and just saying, have a happy day, and things like that. And these are the small gestures that really help in a department.
That's really big. I mean, it can be so simple, literally. It doesn't have to be complicated. And if you put the right framework around it, like, a week, that's the goal. Very simple, basically. Yeah. That's the budget, so to say. And then it's just, that's it, go for it. And it can be so simple, but so powerful. And I think what I just got out of this is, in order to actually make somebody happy, you first need to understand them. And I think that is probably the most important thing that's happening in this whole thing, which is you're required to understand them. So you've got to talk to them, understand them, listen, you've got to be better communicating and all these kinds of things. That's a big one.
Yeah, it's also things like, having an open door policy. We literally don't have doors in these offices. So everyone is sitting on the same floor, including the management. But it's like, if someone has a problem in my department, everyone is welcome to reach out to me, and they know that. And this is how we do it in the entire company, not only in my department.
Now, so the last question I have around this topic of leadership
Yeah.
is, so how do you ensure that, so you got, objectives for the year, objectives for the quarter, or whatever, timeline you have, but you got objectives, right? So how do you ensure that these objectives are, reached while not micromanaging people and, just, doing crazy roadmaps and stuff like that? How do you find sort of the balance in between achieving objectives, but not going crazy with micromanagement and planning and over the top and everything?
So one of the things that we are doing, so we have priorities like every company has. But sometimes you have to reshift priorities along the way. As an operations department, we are sometimes also ending up with jobs that we didn't know that are coming to us a couple of months ago. So you have to reprioritize sometimes things. To be honest, at the end, it's really all about enabling people. You do that rough plan. This is what I want to achieve there. You do commitments. Also with my CEO, I have commitments, and I say, okay, I'm delivering this, and that at that point. And of course, the entire management knows what is happening at what point. And sometimes you have to reschedule and reprioritize. Of course, you always have limited resources. I have never worked for a company where someone said, "Oh, we have enough resources to do that and that and that." But this is actually at the end. If you start micromanagement, you already lost. You already lost the entire game, and it's at the end really enabling people, show them what your goals are for the next month, communicate them clear. We also do, for example, in my department, a newsletter where we say, okay, these are our top achievements that we did, and this is what we have on our roadmap for the next couple of weeks or months. And therefore, everyone in the department knows what's happening next. And as long as they read the newsletter, which they do, but this is how we ensure that everyone knows what the mission is.
I like the level of transparency there. It's very interesting. It creates, this natural accountability for everyone, and it's very transparent. So everybody is even closer together, knits together in that sense. Very powerful. Now, the last question I have is a bit an up in the clouds one. So let's imagine you're a magician now for a second, and you got a magic wand, and you got a genie wish, right? What would you wish for, if it could be anything, literally, that would multiply the impact you have? It could be on your work, on the company, on the industry, on the world, in whatever shape or form.
That is actually the most trickiest question, I think, of the entire interview. So if I could have a wish list, I would wish that we are already probably 2 to 3 years more in the future in terms of getting rid probably of old systems that we have in some ways. So also reason why a digital guy became COO of this company is to probably get rid of some dust that was laid on some of the processes. So I would wish that we were already a couple of steps ahead in terms of improving the processes that are already in place, and just optimizing wherever we can from an SLA perspective, from a quality perspective, from a service perspective, all these things. The good thing is we have plans for that. We know what we need to do. I just would wish that, and now the real complicated part comes, and I would wish that we will already be 2 years in the future.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, and it is the most difficult because it's usually, well, it really is up in the clouds, and you have such a broad spectrum, right? You can go for, and it's but it's always an interesting answer that comes out.
The usual answer might be more resources, probably, right?
No, there's actually no usual answer to that. It's
okay.
It's all over the place. It's from changing the education system to so everybody would be at their full potential, working, all kinds of things, everything, literally anything that goes.
I mean, at the end, you know, if my wish comes true and all these things are ending up, it's actually our mission statement that we have here, and it's making SMEs successful in the digital world. And this is actually the outcome of the entire thing.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I
Yeah.
love that mission statement. And it's also it's much clearer when I hear that what local search is actually all about. It's a very powerful one. Now, what we're going to do is below this video, we're going to link to some of the sources, to the company page, also to your LinkedIn profile, so people can, on the one side, stay up to date on what's going on, what's most exciting, also connect with you on opportunities. So thank you so much for being on the show. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for your time.